I've called this video Landscape Photography to Fine Art. Is what I'm doing fine art? I have no idea, but I didn't think playing around with an image in Lightroom using an effect that I discovered completely by accident when I was looking for a way to do something else was a very good title for a video. So we'll stick with fine art, shall we? Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. So yeah, this is an editing video, but it's a little bit different to my normal editing videos because I'm trying to create a very different kind of an effect. I should say, if you're new here, then a lot of my videos, in fact most of my videos, are shot out in the field, landscape photography, on location. But I do throw in some editing and gear and general photography topics type videos from time to time. So if you like that kind of thing, why not check out some more of my work? And if you like it, hit subscribe so that you can keep up with what's going on with me. Anyway, let's talk about this fine art effect that I'm trying to create here. Now, I stumbled on this effect completely by accident. I was looking to do something else. I saw what this effect did and I thought, yeah, with the right image that could be really cool. But what was the right image? Well, I've decided that this is the right image to use. Now, this image was shot in my recent video, photography in a not very pretty wood. And if you want to see more about how this image was shot and what else I did on that particular shoot, I'll put a link to that up there right now. But the reason that I think this image is going to be the ideal image for this effect that I'm trying to create is the balance of light and shadow and where the light and shadow is, and also the amount of detail. Because what we've got here is these trees, which are the main subject of the image, and they're kind of mostly backlit and a little bit of side light because the sun was quite low and shining through the trees, which means they've got this nice glow. And behind them is a ridge line, a hill and a ridge line and some more trees that were already in shadow. So what we've got is a dark background with a bright central subject. And that bright central subject has also got a lot of fine detail in all the branches and the pine needles. And I think it's that makes this subject or this image ideal for what I'm trying to do. Add to that, we've got this interesting glow on the grasses in the foreground of the image, which I think will also add to the effect. So what is it I'm going to try to do? Well, I'm going to do this in Lightroom. You could do this in Photoshop just as easily, but I think it's kind of cool to try and do it in Lightroom. So let's get onto the computer and have a look at the image in Lightroom. Okay, so here is the image open in Lightroom. Now this is a copy of the processed image because I had done some dodging and burning, and I'd also removed a couple of minor distracting elements in Photoshop. So as I said, this is a copy of a fully processed image. And what I'm going to do with this to start with is I'm going to convert it to black and white. Looks more arty already, doesn't it? But now we come to the really interesting bit, because I'm going to go into the tone curve. I'm going to take the black point of the tone curve here and drag it all the way to the top, and then take the white point of the tone curve and drag it all the way to the bottom. And I now have a negative image. Now the interesting thing about having a negative image is that all of the sliders now work backwards, and we'll see that in the next step that I'm going to do. Because what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into effects and I'm going to apply a post crop vignette. Now normally when you do a vignette, if you drag to the left you get a dark vignette, so that all the borders darken in. Drag to the right, you get a bright vignette. But in this case, when I drag to the left, we get a bright vignette. So it starts to wash out the edges of the scene, and I want a pretty strong bright vignette in there. Probably something like about that. Now then, the rest of what I'm going to do pretty much entirely with the brush tool. So I'm going to go into the brush tool, just take all the effect out. Now again, all of the sliders are working backwards. Now I want to darken a lot of the tree area and some of the foreground area here. So I'm actually going to move the exposure slider to the right, which would normally brighten it, but in this case will darken it. Just about half a stop, about there. I'm also just going to push the highlight slider to the right a little bit, which will actually darken the highlights a bit. And I'm going to bring the shadow slider to the left a bit, which will actually brighten the shadows a little bit, just a little bit. I've got my feather at 100%, my flow at 100%, my density at 100%, and I've got auto masking turned off. Because I don't need to be particularly precise with this. I'm going to make a nice large brush, and I'm just going to paint in roughly around the area where the trees are, and down here in this foreground here. And if I actually turn the mask on, you can see sort of the areas that I'm hitting, and I'm not being too careful with it because I don't need to be. And then I'm going to take another new brush, same settings, because what I want to do is kind of build the effect over a series of passes, if you like. So I've made the brush a little bit smaller, and I'm going to darken in a few areas kind of around here. Just picking some of the brighter areas and darkening them down a bit. And some of them will need more passes than others to get the effect that I want. Okay, and then another new one to hit some of the brighter areas again. So we'll hit here. I think this is a cool effect. And then another new one. Make the brush a bit smaller, just be a bit more selective. I'll come up around these edges a bit. Another new one, because this area here definitely needs to be darker. And you can see I'm just creating new brushes and adding the effect in one bit at a time. Definitely some more in here. Another new one, just, of course I can always undo any of these if I think I've gone too far, or I can brush the effect out if I want to. And one more bit in this kind of foreground area here, bring out some more detail. A couple of areas that still look a little bit bright up here. And the great thing about this is I'm not having to be, I'm not having to make complex selections and, trying to, be exact, because the effect doesn't need it. Okay, I think one more thing to do. I'm going to take another new brush, but I'm going to reverse my settings. So half a stop negative on exposure, which will of course have the opposite effect. Highlights down that way, shadows up that way. And I'm just going to go in maybe a little bit around some of these edges here, just to kind of add a bit of contrast around some of these edges. And there might be a couple of areas I want to go a bit further. So another new one, and I think perhaps down in here needs a little bit more, maybe around there. There's a bit there that looks actually way too bright, so I'm going to go back to my original brush setting, roughly anyway, it doesn't have to be exact. I'll brush that area in there a bit. Just go in and have a look at that. There is actually a gap there, but this bit looks a bit bright. A couple of areas that need some extra work. And then I think I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go into the basics, and I'm just going to lift the image a little bit, make it a touch brighter. So that will mean, counterintuitively again, just dragging the exposure slider to the left a little bit, like that. And that is the final image, and I think that's actually a pretty cool effect. And that's it. I think it's an interesting effect. It will work for some images, won't work for most, but on this one I think it looks pretty good. I'm sure I haven't invented something new. I'm sure there's lots of people out there that have been doing this sort of thing for ages, but I've just never seen it before, and I just thought it was pretty cool. Anyway, I hope you've liked the image. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please give it a like, share it on social media. Don't forget about leaving me a comment. And if you're new here and you've enjoyed this and you like the looks of the sort of stuff that I do, don't forget about hitting subscribe before you go. As always, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch. Oh, sneak peek of the next in the field video coming up at the end of this, so hang on. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks very much for watching, and until the next video. Bye. Okay guys, I'm off to Font Rocha. This railing here is a blooming nuisance, but I think I may have got it.